Hello and welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. Before I start, let me just do my usual sound check to make sure that you can hear me. Hello. Okay, you seem to hear me fine. I'm very relieved about that. The reason why I'm so worried about the audio is because that is the standard thing that gets sabotaged every single time. But anyway, I would like to welcome you if you just join me fresh. I've just gone on the Richie Allen show tonight for the third time, and there are many people who maybe heard about me for the very first time, and Richie was announcing my website and my YouTube channel. So if you made your way here and you found me, this is what I look like. I'm an Oxford academic, or a former Oxford academic. I used to work at CERN in Geneva, and also at an accelerator site called DAISY in Hamburg. And after I left the particle physics, I worked a bit in medical physics. And then after I began to research the physics of complex systems. And that's when I started to be openly targeted by MI5. But as I said on the Richie Allen show tonight, I was already a target of MI5 before then. And it took me some time to figure that out and do the forensic analysis of my own case and trace it back. But this is my current status of knowledge. And since I became a high intensity target, very overt target, I have been investigating these crimes and trying to support the victims as best as I could. And right now I'm working as an expert witness for court cases. And I'm also preparing on launching my own, which will be a follow-up of Dr. Katherine Horton versus SIS, that's MI6, the Secret Intelligence Service, and MI5 and GCHQ. And this is a court case that took place in the London High Court in 2016. I think if I remember correctly, the number, I have to check on my website. If you go to my website to stop007.org, I would like to show you where you can find the information, just so that you can check up on this. Let me just share my screen so that you can check that, you know, that the website you get through to is really me, because there are a couple of fake websites that I believe have been set up by the intelligence agencies. But my website looks like this. The top screw up is a word play on top secret. And what I talked about today is the affidavit form here. That's the top link. And you will be able to access that tomorrow. And what will happen tomorrow is that I will launch. I hope you can see my cursor. I'm never quite sure. So the second link here is the affidavit form is out. Explanatory notes follow on Thursday. Now, this was months and months ago, but because of the attacks on me, I wasn't able to complete it. So I actually would like to invite you to join me for broadcast tomorrow when I'm more awake than today. And then I will be releasing the explanatory notes that are missing so far in this pack. And you can already have a sneak preview. You can have a look at the affidavit form and what it looks like. And in here, you can see just how many different offenses have been codified. It just goes on for, 100 pages. And these are all the types of offenses that victims of the intelligence agencies are suffering from. So this is what this entire thing is about. But if you go to my website, you can also check up the details about me. If you go to this section about Dr. Horton, you'll be able to see the classified section here. And the classified is, again, a joke. It's not classified. It's very public. And you can, first of all, read my the quick summary of my case. But more importantly, you have two links here. The first one is qualifications and work. And if you click there, you will get through to the actual documents where I'm proving here, for example, my certificate of fellowship at St. John's College. If I've redacted something, it is just personal information like date of birth that it's used for bank accounts as well. But should you have been any doubt, you're always welcome to call them up at this phone number on the top left and ask them about my details. And you can really check that what I'm saying is the truth. You can see that there's a letter here with which I was posted to CERN, and my stay was extended. And you can see clearly that I was addressed as Dr. Katherine Horton at CERN in the Department of Physics, and I was addressed by the Particle Physics Department, the Research Council for particle physics. So you can see that what I'm saying is the truth. You can check the dates, and there's much, much more information here that you can check. But the other link, if I may go back, is that's also very important for you to have a look at, is my court case here. That's the second link. And you can actually see the real life transcripts of the 3 hearings I had. The first one was with Judge Spencer on the 19th of May 2016. I actually believe Judge Spencer is very, very good as a judge. I was very, very happy about that. Judge Edis, my second hearing, 16th of June 2016, where I was begging for time extension because I was being assaulted so hard. And then between the second and the third hearing, by the way, the transcript is always here. Feel free to click on it. You can see the precise words that were spoken. But I should say that the transcript was also falsified by MI5, who seemed to control the courts quite tightly. And the crucial question by Judge Edis was removed, and my answer was also removed from the transcript. I tried to get the audio recordings of the court hearings of the first and second one, but the court refused to reply. So that's where I'm at now. And you can see that these court cases are over 2 years ago. And at the very third one, my court case was thrown out. And most curiously, it was claimed that because I hadn't written particulars of claim on any of my documents, there was no claim to start with, therefore no claim could be struck out, and therefore the case was just terminated. I received a second death threat 3 days later, and I should say that between here, the first and the second hearing, on the way to the very first hearing, MI5 or MI6, whoever they were, delivered a death threat to me, which is stated here. You can see that in the bullet points. I'm not sure if you guys can actually see when I am highlighting text. I hope you can. And then I experienced an assassination attempt 3 days after the death threat in Switzerland. So you can check that what I'm saying is the truth. You can also find the court reference, which was EWHC 2095. QB stands for Queen's Bench Division. And this was a real life case. So everything you need to know about me is here, or most things, because I'm about to upload a lot more details. And I encourage you to have a look and check that everything I'm telling you is in fact the truth. But I would like to also go a bit further, because today, so previously on my previous 2 appearances on the Richie Allen show, I spoke about the gang stalking, which is actually the intelligence agencies. It's a form of psychological terror and real life physical terror that is based on the East German Stasi's Zersetzung. So the Stasi used to follow people, but at the same time as the Stasi was doing it, so was the FBI in the US. And the FBI's version of the program, identical to that of the Stasi, was called COINTELPRO. So in Europe, people tend to refer to the Stasi, and in the Anglo-Saxon world and in America, people refer to COINTELPRO, but the methods are identical. So on the Richie Allen shows, I spoke about this COINTELPRO or Stasi stalking, if you like, which is a type of ganging up on a victim with many people and coordinating the following of the person through mobile phones and so on, and also body language, so hand signs and body signs. And then I also spoke about the directed energy weapon attacks on me, but I haven't actually spoken in detail about the body implants. And that's because at the time of my second interview with Richie Allen, I think I was still very unknowledgeable about these. And today, when I spoke about neurotechnology and implant technology at length, of course, the first question that people have is, have you ever seen one? Do you have any evidence of these sort of implants? And yes, as a matter of fact, I do. I would like to point you to the evidence, because if you are new to this, it is very disconcerting and very unbelievable. But I want you to know that there's a lot of very solid evidence for this. So I guess probably the most important one is to actually have seen an implant, a real life implant. And there, I would like to point you to a very important book. By the way, the intelligence agencies do have a habit of sabotaging what I'm doing. So let me just check that the audio is still there. Yes, okay. And I see that my head is kind of cut off by the camera. So let me just lift it up. By the way, the background is a bit dull. But you can see from the wooden chalet style background that I am in fact in Switzerland. So a lot of houses are decorated like that. So anyway, what I would like to show you today is a book where you can see real life implants. And the book is called Global Brain Chip and Mesogens. So let me see if I can show you. I hope it shows up in the okay, so you can find this book on Amazon, Global Brain Chip and Mesogens. And the subtitle is Nanomachines for Ultimate Control of False Memories. Now, false memories is one of these keywords that's being banded around in research literature. But when you hear false memories, what you should think about is the purpose is the ultimate total neurological control, if you like, down to the synaptic level in the way memories form, okay? And, you know, much, much more, and what images you store and which you forget. But anyway, the main point I would like to point to is the global brain chip. Okay, now this book was written by Dr. Hildegard Staninger, who's done absolutely amazing work in the field. I really recommend her. She has also, as an expert, worked for a very long time with victims and trying to help them. And she is an expert on the, she's an industrial toxicologist. And if you haven't heard the term before, you should think this is somebody who works with industrially produced materials that are toxic to humans, in a nutshell. Okay, but what this hints at is that nanotechnology that can then assemble itself into brain chips or body chips is being produced on an industrial scale, which it is. Okay, so industrial toxicologist already says a lot, but she's an expert. And what you will find in this book, which by the way is kind of a big format and fairly thin, because it's more for research paper and research documentation, but it is excellent. And I hope that Dr. Staninger forgives that I show a few images from her book. I hope this will lead to an increased sale of her book, because I think everybody should have this on their shelf, especially if you work in the medical field or in law enforcement or in forensics. This topic will not go away. This is going to stay with us forever from now on, and we need to be able to find these chips. So let me show you, you know, a drum crescendo. Let me show you a brain chip that was operated out from a victim. This is what it looks like, okay? Here. And you can find this image on page 81 of her book, and it's called, so this is a brain meningioma, in brackets, inverted commas, a brain chip. Yeah, she calls it a brain chip. All right, I'm not sure if you can read it because my camera struggles with the focus. All right, but this is a reactive Nemati mesogen, whatever the hell that is, an image taken by Applied Consumer Services Inc. and in Florida, and this was taken in 2011. I guess the date is what I want to show you. Okay, so this is fairly new stuff in terms of research, but this was operated out of a real life patient, as far as I understand. And I think later on, so you'll find more images of the brain implant, and it looks very gooey and organic. But there are many, many more pictures. I don't want to, and I am not allowed to show you all the images anyway, but let me show you the adjacent image, okay? This one here shows a nasal implant. This is a nasal bulb specimen taken in Los Angeles here. And I would like you to focus in on these tentacles here, okay? You have these things, and I think they are nanowires, okay? But anyway, this particular sample, I would have to check what exactly this is, but I want you to keep this image in mind, because these structures can be both used as antenna or antennae, and also structures like that, I believe, are being used to connect and wire us up with our nervous system. Okay, so if you imagined, because you know, you have to understand this entire topic, it helps to have some sort of mental images. And in physics, we have sometimes mental images that are maybe scientifically not 100% correct, but help the layperson to wrap their head around this scary topic. But if you wanted to understand how a chip can be used to influence you, just imagine taking a chip like that, and these little wires connect up or grow into or fuse with your nerves. All right, they somehow latch on. So what you could do is pass an electrical signal from this unit along and into the nerves. If you could do that, you could load this chip, and there are many ways to create kind of an organic battery that can store, charge, and then release it. And if you imagine if you could charge this little thing through, say, Wi-Fi or electromagnetic radiation, which we know is possible and is being sold commercially, if you use that, you could charge the chip, and then at your, at a remote controlled signal, pass a radio signal to that chip and then release the charge. In other words, send electrical pulses that are perhaps much stronger than what the human brain can produce, and cause, for example, things like agonizing pain. But also, if this stuff is connecting up to the muscles, you could trigger muscles in a way that override the brain, simply because the currents or the intensity, the amplitude of the electromagnetic signals that are being passed along the muscles and the nervous system are much larger than what the brain can produce. In other words, if you then think of moving your arm not to the right but to the left, a chip can still override that and do something else with your arm. So using chip implants, you can end up with this kind of Dr. Strangelove sort of scenario where a victim has to fight their own limb, because their limb is actually being remote controlled, and the victim might not know that there might be a bunch of chips inside or near the joints, and certainly connecting up to the major muscles. And if a computer learns how to send signals in a particular sequence, you can produce fluent movement by triggering the muscles in sequence like the human body would. So you can imagine that if you have these chips, which we can prove that they exist and have been operated out of victims, if you have the necessary computing power, and if you can charge these chips through Wi-Fi, which we also know is possible, then you end up with these scenarios. And that is precisely what the victims are reporting. So I just want to point you to this book. Please, if you are in the medical field, or if you're in law enforcement or forensics, buy this book. If you feel that you are a victim, please buy this book as well. It's not, I don't think it's prohibitively expensive, but it should be on your shelf, not least so that you can open this book. And I tell you, it's not just full of color images of real life chips. It also has scientific measuring results. So you can see microscopic images and these sort of images, which to me at first sight look like X-ray fluorescence. And it's an analysis like that I have conducted myself on a throat implant that was a remote controlled strangulator implanted in Melanie Richan, who is the founder and president of a human rights charity called Ikator in Brussels. And she's helping other implant victims. But she had literally, as a mother, I think when she was pregnant with her second child, or maybe it was before that or after that, she was implanted with a huge device that had the dimensions of 3.5 centimeters, not millimeters, centimeters, 3.5 centimeters by 1.5 by 1.5, and that was placed around her air pipe and was constricting it in a remote controlled fashion. So of course, as you can imagine, the strangulation of women at will is part of certain sex fetishes, and this criminality is intricately tied to human trafficking and human sex trafficking. So the victims who end up with body implants have several business plans executed on their on their bodies, and one of them, which is a very common one, is sex trafficking. And you have these sad people who can then presumably pay a subscription fee, access your body chips, and rape you. Now that happens to me a lot. I get raped a lot, and I'm not ashamed to say that, because I know from the other victims that it happens to virtually every single victim. Okay, so I have to be quite open about this. And on the show today, on the Richie Allen Show, I try to explain that the rape is being done with genital implants, and if you look at my YouTube channel. I also, if you go to, let me share my screen again and show you how you can navigate my YouTube channel. So I think it's YouTube/C/stop 007 org, or you just type stop 007 into the search. Let me just share my screen. So for those people who are new to my miscellaneous platforms, that you can find your way around. So this is what you get if you type stop 007 into YouTube. This is my channel here. Okay, and this is what's live now. And you see several playlists here. And this is the Special Investigators series. Here you will find the interview with the gentleman whom I mentioned, the former NASA engineer who was talking about satellites. That's Richard Lighthouse here. That's the second interview. And oops, sorry, forgive me. I don't want to do advertising here, but that's just what's flashed up. So this is the interview, and you can see Richard Lighthouse here talk about satellites, and he's the gentleman who has traced the targeting also back to Air Force Base Schriever. You can find a lot more information about that looking at his website, which is linked here. And then going back to, this is Dr. Joseph Farrell, and he has tracked the spread of the Nazis after the Second World War. I also encourage you to watch his interview and follow his research. But if you scroll down here, you will find a section called Nazi implant detection. And this is very relevant to most victims who I show. You can see me in my old study holding a bug detector, and you can see how I'm using that bug detector to show how it flashes up with a signal when I'm holding it above the chips that have been implanted on my scalp. And I'm doing the same thing, going through systematically, and I'm showing my knee implants and miscellaneous body implants. And down here, you will find a video which is called Electronic Rape, what the chip signal sounds like. And there you can see, yes, I do use alu hats, and I'm not shy about that because they're the best protection that you can do quickly and cheaply if you're being shot on the head, because it blocks at least some pulses. And the entire expression tinfoil hat was developed by the CIA precisely to cover up their early day mind control and brain mutilation and brain interference experiments. But here you can see me holding a second device that also has an audio output. And in this video, I demonstrate what the signal sounds like, the radio frequency signal, when I'm being raped. And it's kind of like a signal which I believe is being sent to the implants. And this happens a lot. So if you're one of these people who is struggling with this type of problem, which is on the rise, know that there's something that you can do to collect evidence and to protect yourself in court. Now, the other thing I wanted to say is that on my website, you will find my weekly show, which is called Global Crime Fighters here. And in the Global Crime Fighters series, which I can just show you here, I am going through systematically and I'm mapping the different aspects of this global crime cartel. So I'm showing what sort of equipment you might need as a victim or an investigator here in the second episode. I'm talking about underground bunkers, about sex trafficking, about grooming and recruitment of children into the crime cartel and the intelligence agencies. Then, grooming and sex trafficking at university, and then about, the intelligence agencies themselves, and then finally the intelligence agencies going rogue. Now, last week's episode had to be cancelled because I was assaulted just so heavily. Okay, so you have to be aware that when you see me talk, I do sound very coherent, but sometimes off camera, I'm really struggling because the chips that are on my scalp and everywhere else on my body are being used to torture me intensely. And then add to that, I'm also being pulsed with these types of waveforms that penetrate absolutely everything. So I spend, I think by now, over a year and a half, so probably almost 2 years, cowering in a bunker and trying to protect myself. And as I mentioned on the show, my marriage was broken up. by MI5 and also by MI6, who have targeted me everywhere around the world after I left the United Kingdom. And they also affected my husband and my husband's family. And I also have to say that so we separated, and after the separation, the intelligence agencies went utterly nuts at me. So the physical assaults exploded because they were hoping if I'm just a woman on my own, I should crack, commit suicide, or, I would be so much easier to be done in. And, well, I'm glad to say that they have failed so far, but they don't stop trying because they are psychopaths. And just like a serial killer will not stop by his or herself, these people do not stop. Okay, they are highly psychopathic, and many of them are, yes, indeed, serial killers who have been recruited into government service for the express purpose of killing others. So this is what we're dealing with. It is extremely disconcerting and very, very hard on the victims. So when you see me announce a show and just don't turn up, it's not because I don't care or I don't have the personal discipline. It's most of the time because I just physically cannot. I literally, I'm at the end of my capacity. I am being crippled with these pulse shots. I'm being neurologically degraded and neurologically utterly disabled in many cases. And you don't notice, but it's sometimes a hard fight just to be able to enunciate words or keep my train of thought while I'm being pulsed. So I also talked today on the show about how hard it is to measure these pulses. And I mentioned on the show how the intelligence agencies would come and sabotage the measuring equipment that victims buy. And I have to say that the equipment costs several hundreds of pounds, sometimes, over £1,000, and really good equipment costs several £1,000s, tens of thousands of pounds. So victims find themselves in a situation whereby they cannot afford the equipment to prove or trace back pulses that are being emitted by modern covert military technology. So I had to find ways of proving that these shots are happening. And to date, the cheapest and easiest way I found is to use crumpled up metal foil, because there's in classical physics with classical waves, if you have a metal surface, light is reflected. This is why a mirror works, because behind the glass there's a layer of silver which reflects visible light, which is electromagnetic waves of a certain frequency. Now, this works up to a point. When you have X-rays, they can penetrate certain layers, and then you need thicker, lead and steel and so on, and then X-rays might not be able to penetrate. But the really disconcerting thing is that I am being attacked by a type of wave that I can't really explain with the physics that I learned at Oxford or the physics that I used at CERN. And it's kind of disconcerting and maybe embarrassing to admit that I'm just not, clever enough. It's nothing to do with clever. I wasn't trained or educated to be able to handle this. So I had to learn to really develop an open mind and realize that universities, very much like schools, have also been compartmentalized, and a lot of very crucial knowledge has been kept away from researchers. They haven't been these type of insights and these technologies and that science hasn't been kept away from everybody. There's a parallel society by now in every modern country, consisting of the members of the intelligence agencies, their families, their children and associates and informants and so on. And they live in a parallel world, in a parallel society, where they do have access to the surveillance technology, they do have access to modern medical health care that's being kept from us, and they do have access to the science that underlines the weapons technology that they use on us. Now, the other part of society is being kept in the dark. Forgive me. It was a long day, and I've been talking a lot. So the other part of society is being kept in the dark entirely and is being assaulted with the technologies, with the pathogens and toxins that the other half of society knows how to guard against and how to cure. So we have this two-tier society, it completely split into two. And even if you're part of the insiders, it's like a set of Russian dolls where you have a doll inside a doll inside a doll inside a doll. This is how the cartel works. Even if you're an insider, you I'm very sorry, I'm just being hit in the throat, and it's very hard to kind of fight against. And when I say I'm being hit, I mean pulsed shots onto my throat that can be focused in very precisely down to about a centimeter or maybe millimeter, you know. This is what I'm struggling against right now. So, but anyway, pulling through that, we are dealing with these two societies, and depending on where you are, you might have access to many more secrets that, you know, other citizens or people and friends and family might not have, but even you will not have full access. And as far as I can make out, the entire purpose of the cartel is to stagger society into different levels of classification and you know, different levels of access to technology. And what they want to build up is this idea that throughout your life you have to keep pleasing the cartel, and then you might be granted favors, you might be granted the right to live your life, and you might be granted access to secret technologies and secrets. This is how the secret societies work. This is how Intel works. This is how the crime cartel works. Now, I am totally against that sort of concept. And as a systems analyst, I can tell you it's highly inefficient. What I believe should be the case is that, you know, you go through school, or when you turn 18 and when you finished your education, you are a fully developed human being and you have right of access to all the information. And you should have access to information that is crucial for your national security, because the only way to ensure national security is if everybody knows about the problems and helps brainstorming what the hell to do about them. So this is the world I'm working towards, but what I'm up against is this world of staggered knowledge and secret societies and secret this and that. And in my videos that I've also put up, if you look on my YouTube channel, you'll find a set of lectures where you can see me with a whiteboard and with little magnets outlining the concepts of capture and deep capture. You can see that there I'm trying to explain how secrecy always leads to criminality. So when we have a secret intelligence service, what we actually have is a criminal intelligence service. When you have secret services, you have criminal services. So this is how I can even prove as a systems analyst that MI5 is not just owned by organized crime, they are organized crime at the highest level. And this is why we need to shut them down, and we need to get them out of our life forever, which seems like an outlandish thing to say, and it seems like it's not achievable, but it actually is. We're not that far away from it. And there are certain mechanisms that we can use available to us through modern networking to really shut these people down once and for all. And this is what we'll be working towards. But anyway, right now in this situation, at this moment in time, it's still the case that I'm being implanted by devices that you can find here, that I have measured, as you can see on my website. And it's also the case that I'm being shot at with directed energy weapons, and I try to prove them, make them audible and make them visible through the videos that I put up using metal foil and you know, showing how these shots can dent and can move metal foil. So if you would like to see what that looks like, please allow me to share my screen once more and take you back to the browser. Sorry, I would like to show you, this is just YouTube. Let me take you back, sorry, here to my website. If you go to my website and you scroll down, you'll find a few very useful things. If you are a victim, I direct you to equipment and detection here, where you can go through the entire list of things that I'm using to measure, to record evidence, to fight back, you know, measuring devices, cameras, tricks, and everything. I'm just scrolling through fast here. Okay, now this is equipment and detection. If you are not a victim, I direct you to, for example, how you can help. This is a list of things here. And it's not just with donations and financials that you can assist. It's many, many more things. But ultimately, the best way to help is to really, you know, we need to hit back at these people. The people responsible for the targeting of me are Andrew Parker, head of MI5, Alex Younger, head of MI6, Dr. Bruno Karl, head of German intelligence, BND, Jean-Philippe Gaudin, formerly Markus Seiler, head of Swiss Intel, and then Dr. Norbert Riedel, the head of the German ambassador here in Switzerland, ought to help me, but his predecessor already refused. That was Dr. Otto Lampe. So I am now going towards court action and less to the ambassador anymore. But in the UK, the person who has a duty to supervise MI6 is, I think, is it still Boris Johnson? Is he still the UK Foreign Secretary? I have to check. I was so busy I didn't keep a tab on this, but he certainly was responsible. And curiously, today on the Richie Allen show, there was a short clip, a short audio clip played that had Boris Johnson's voice saying something that, you know, you can listen to my interview and try to make it out. So that was fairly at the beginning, I think in the first 15 minutes of my interview. So see if you can spot that. And yes, it's true, it is Boris Johnson whose duty certainly it was to supervise MI6. So that's the connection to Boris Johnson that I was quite bemused about. But anyway, so here's also a list of other things that you can do to help me. And what will be ever more topical is the last one here, which is to come to the court cases. As a public observer, you have a right to attend all the court cases and to keep an eye on the judges, because we really need judges of high integrity to support us to shut these things down and stop these crimes against humanity. But anyway, let me go back to the starting page. So what I wanted to show you is how to navigate this website. Okay, you will have the news at the top. You have everything you need to know about me here. Here I'm writing a quick help for victims. This is what you can do to help if you are not a victim or if you are a victim. And then the further down you go, the more deeply into the matter it goes. So this is how to do measurements and shield yourself. This is about just the fact that 70% of the victims seem to be female. This is based on a statistic by Dr. John Hall. Then there's an FAQ set. You will find a research library with a lot of information. If you need help with your case, I'm also offering consulting services. And I'm also running an investigation, a criminal investigation, more about that here. And you will find the interviews, blah, blah, blah. And I will let you to explore this website on your own. But I want to point you to the evidence, which by no means is complete. In fact, it is very sparsely populated, and I have about, I think, almost 2 terabytes of data and evidence to back up everything that I'm saying. But what is already uploaded here is a video at the very top here called Machine Gunning Evidence for Court. And you can, I encourage you to have a look at that, and you can use the shortcuts here. And for example, at 8 minutes, you can literally see what it looks like when you are being shot in the face with a directed energy weapon. And I'll try to make this loud. I'm not sure if it will work now that I'm playing it, but let's see. So, okay, it's far too quiet. There will be a replay. And you can hear me talk. Watch that again. You will see the foil move. You can hear it now, and you can move it. You can see it move to the right. And as I explain here, this was a shot going through about 6 layers of aluminium. Okay, so let me just go back and let me play it one more time. Okay, so you can hear it, and when you watch the video, I placed my hands demonstratively into the picture so that you can see that I'm not modifying anything. I also filmed the entire cabin, and I was totally on my own, and there's much more evidence where you can actually see that this stuff is moving. So this foil isn't being pulled from behind. The shot is coming from here, and I also traced that setup back to a neighbor who had a screen. He had a kind of like a hedge or trees on the side of his balcony, perfectly lined up with the direction of the shot. And then behind the trees on Google Maps, I could see that there was what looked like a big screen. And I very strongly suspect that this is the neighbor who had these weapons mounted on his balcony, was shooting at me past his screen, and was using this big thick screen to guard against the back reflection, so when the shots bounce back, which they also occasionally do. So this is serious evidence about serious crimes against humanity, and you should understand that the victims who have these chips will also typically be assaulted by directed energy weapons. And in reverse, the people who are being assaulted with direct energy weapons tend to be implanted with chips like these to guide the weapons. In other words, when you're being shot at through several walls, which these weapons can do, if you have a little coordinate system of chips on your body, if a chip is hit, it can signal back, yes, I was hit. You know, this is a form of calibration. And then you can be hit on your, say, your left shoulder and your right shoulder. And then if the machine does it, it can calculate the middle and then, you know, shoot you in the face or shoot you in the head. This is how it works, as far as I can tell. Okay. And this comes from being physically assaulted since January 2016. So we are now talking almost 3 years of physical assault every single day, 24 hours. And then you probably wonder, how the hell am I still alive? Well, I am just about not alive, but I have a lot of health problems and a lot of neurological degeneration happening. It is very, very hard. And also my joints and my bones are being gunned to pieces, and bone structure is absorbing most of the energy. And therefore, I get increasingly more bone damage. So the reason why I want to say that is because if you understand what the chips can do, if you understand the damage from the directed energy weapons, you very quickly cotton on to the fact that it is a huge business plan. If you could mount weapons on, say, a satellite or in a neighborhood covertly, and then at night when people are helpless and stationary in their beds, if you can then at night gun them with directed energy weapons and give them, say, cancer or joint damage or arthritis or what looks like arthritis or you name it, then the pharma industry can make a lot of money. So it would pay for big pharma to invest in directed energy weapons, to spread them throughout the community, to increase physical damage, to then make us all pay for products that really can't undo the physical damage, but are fighting the symptoms like pain and stuff like that. So, you know, it's very easy to understand why these things are proliferating. And if you're wondering, do these things proliferate or do they not? Let me just share my screen one more time and take you back to my website here, to the front page. And if you go to the section called the Research Library here, you can see how big the market for directed energy weapons is. By the way, you can also see a patents list that the gentleman has sent to me, which includes 110 patents that you can see for neurotechnology and these weapon systems. But the second list is a global market analysis for directed energy weapons, and they are expected to quintuple from 8 billion to 42 billion between the years 2016 to 2023. Now, this used to be a report on this website called Report Buyer, but if you click on the original site, the report is gone now, but it can still be found, and this is what the main link links to, it can still be found on the Wayback Machine, exactly as it showed up. And I encourage everybody to have a look and make sure that this doesn't disappear. But here you can see all the different regions where these technologies are being bought en masse. And there's a table of contents that is extremely revealing in itself. Here are stakeholders, you know, and oh, sorry, I meant to say down here, the suppliers by, you know, product type. They're called non-lethal weapons, but in actual fact, they are lethal. They are always lethal. And you can see the type of weapons covered. There are particle beam weapons, high energy laser technology, high energy microwave, and so on and so on. Gunshot, ship-based directed energy weapons, land vehicles. And here, when you think land vehicles, you probably think about military technology, think about the mounting of directed energy weapons on a tank. The sad reality is that directed energy weapons are being mounted covertly on everyday cars. So you might be just driving to the shops with your children and you will be gunned by a direct energy weapon. And in the beginning, I explained how I survived my first assassination attempt 3 days after having received a death threat from MI6 on my way to the High Court. And the assassination attempt, well, the death threat was a guy coming up to me and, out of talking to me on the bus from Heathrow into London. And then out of context saying, there's crime in every country, but in some countries it's very well hidden. He repeated that twice, and then he looked at me and said, "Did they kill Diana?" And probably by now you know that the increasingly well-proven hypothesis is that Diana was killed by MI6. Now, getting a threat like that from MI6, having one's attention drawn to Princess Diana, or, her death rather, and then surviving an assassination attempt 3 days later, when what happened is that I was gunned into the head as I was traveling at high speed on a motorway in Switzerland inside a tunnel. And had I not pulled out of the beamline, I would have probably dropped unconscious and smashed into the wall. Now, these weapons, there was only the car in front and the car behind in the tunnel. I don't think that a satellite was shooting through the Swiss mountain that was, between me and the satellite above my head, above the tunnel. So these shots must have come from the car in front. It was hitting my forehead. And the shots, when they're hitting you, it is literally like being hit on the forehead with a hammer. The waveforms can be tuned that the longitudinal momentum is so enormous, you literally just think, now I'm going to pass out. So the way I survived is that instead of slowing down, which would have been maybe the instinctive way, I said to my husband, I need to get out of the beamline. And I went into the overtaking lane, accelerating forward. Now, this is not something that you do instinctively if you don't know what this technology is. But either these people, gave up, or it was just meant to be a threat. I've no idea. But as soon as I pulled out of the lane, the beam stopped. In principle, these beams can track you and you can still be made to crash. But fortunately, at that point, the shots stopped and I managed to come out of the tunnel, albeit rather shaken. But this is how these weapons work, okay? And now we're in a situation where you can commit covert murder on the street, and the car accident that would result would not point back to you. And this technology is being now not just, launched now on the streets. It has been on the streets for, I would say, 2 decades at least. And the number of weaponized cars is increasing. So, keep an open mind and have this in mind as you're traveling, and also have this in mind if you come across car accidents. And always think, these days you can bring about a car accident by hacking the car and overtaking it, but you can also hack the brain and overtake it off the driver using chip implants or the neurotechnology. And you can also shoot the driver in the head with directed energy weapons and cause an accident. In all cases, it would be external effects and a third party committing murder. But the really nasty bit is that now you can commit the perfect murder. The murder cannot be traced back to you. And this is now an everyday reality on the streets around the world. So the real question is, how do we fight back forensically? And I was very desperate for a long time, and I thought there's no way to fight this, until I realized, oh, nonsense. It's actually, the more egregious it gets, the easier it is to fight. Number one, when you have this sort of technology being developed and being implanted in people, you need such a large number of experts and people involved. The more people are involved, the easier it is to solve the crime and find them. So we are now going after the labs that are producing these and the companies that are producing these. For example, the strangulator that was implanted in Melanie Richard's throat, that was based on a technology patented, nanotechnology patented by the University of Twente. The patent was then acquired by Motorola, and it very much looks like maybe Motorola or a similar weapons company produced the strangulator that was then implanted in her throat against her will. So there's a chain of people, And then, of course, who is doing the implanting? Well, it's being done by the intelligence agencies and their trainee networks. How is the implanting done? Well, they break into homes at night or they break into hotel rooms. And what they do is they seem to anesthetize people by, for example, pumping an odorless gas into the home. This can be done through the letterbox. This can be done, through a little pocket of gas hidden somewhere, maybe under your ceiling without you noticing, and then being released by remote control. It can be done a million ways. And I'm sure that the intelligence agencies are getting ever more creative about how to do this. But the bottom line is it is rather easy to do. Then they come into your home and they can implant you and your family. The most common type of implants that I found are done with what I would call a laser scalpel. These are very short cuts, some of them extremely fine, especially for chips in the forehead and on the face. So the way they look, the way that it's done is if you use a laser scalpel and you cut the skin, then it seems to be the case that the laser ensures that the blood instantly coagulates so it doesn't bleed. It's a very clean way of doing mini operations. You can put in a chip and then you can use tissue glue to seal it close again. With standard tissue glue that I have come across, you just have to hold the cut for something like 20 seconds or 30 seconds and it seals. And the next morning, the people who have been implanted wake up and it looks like the scratch from a cat. So this is how it's done, okay? So I just wanted to ensure that if you got interested in the topic and if you got interested in me and my work, then you can see me now. You can also see that, there is evidence for these chip implants. They have been operated out. We can measure them. What I cannot do, because it's medically confidential information, is I cannot show you MRIs from victims, because at this moment in time, I have a stack of MRIs and scans, but I do not have the permission from the victims to publish them, and I haven't anonymized them yet. So this is still work, and I'm working on that. And then especially one of my projects is to inform the medical profession, or rather to inform the normal part of the medical profession that doesn't know anything about it, being fully aware that there's also dual society in medicine. There's a large, parallel society of doctors and people in the medical field and in the pharmaceutical field who know exactly what's going on. And in fact, they are doing the implanting, and they're also doing the data harvesting from these implants. So there's a lot of illegal research going on. There is sex trafficking going on. And there's also the torture and the takedown of humans going on all at the same time. And typically, a victim will experience all of these. So the intelligence agencies and the criminal networks that own them and run them and are identical to them, they are trying to maximize the profit off the back of every victim. So you would be, as a victim, loaded into many business plans. You would be sex trafficked, you would be trafficked for human experimentation, weapons testing. They would just try to destroy your life for fun, and they will try to get as money off you as they can. So this is the situation. But I also would like to do the following. I would like to, it's now 1:45 a.m. here in Switzerland. I have to sign off, but I would like to invite you, what is already tonight on the 14th of November, and in the evening, which would be at 8 p.m. in Central Europe, so Berlin and Zurich time, but it would be 7 p.m. in the UK, London time, and I think it would be 2 p.m. if I haven't miscalculated on the East Coast, so New York time, Eastern time. I invite you to come to my YouTube channel again. I will be going live again, and then I will be publishing and launching the affidavit survey. And this will be a survey of all the victims internationally using the affidavit template that I pointed you to in the very beginning. And this is extremely important because it is the one civilized way of collecting the information, preparing court cases, showing the world that this is indeed going on, and getting relief and also damages and tort payments to the victims as quickly as possible. and we will need your support. So it would be really help that if you could join in and actually keep an eye on what we are doing, so that you know what's going on, you know what we're trying to achieve, even if you're not a victim. Because, for example, Katherine Horton, I think one of the most highly regarded financial commentators in the world. So she did an interview with me, and I did an interview with her, and she was talking about the fact that in the US you have 350 million targeted individuals or victims of this criminality. So the entire US is victim of these type of crimes, but the victims split into two groups. One group knows very well that they are being targeted and they know that they are victims, and the other group is completely oblivious. And guess of whom one can make more money, right? So if you're not informed about these things, then you can fall victim and not know it. Your family and friends and your elderly parents and whoever's dear to you can fall victim. And I have to tell you that a significant fraction of the population everywhere in the world is already a victim. So that's just something what I saw and was brought home to me as I was going through victim cases. So anyway, please join me tomorrow night, or tonight actually, on my YouTube channel. I will try to explain what I'm doing as best as I can. And then after that, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Subscribe, not out of self-promotion, but just because I'm really trying to inform people about crimes against humanity. I'm fighting them, and my fight against the intelligence agencies will intensify over the coming weeks and the coming months. And I will need protection in the form of the public keeping an eye on me. And I also will need your help, that every time I do something, that you help me lobby those institutions and help to put social pressure on them to behave with integrity. I cannot do that on my own. I've, done my best to bring it this far. But now, as we're moving towards court cases, if the public doesn't put pressure on the judges, and in fact puts more pressure on the judges than the crime cartel does, then the judges will be forced to decide against us, which will mean that for their own personal self-protection, they will have to, turn us away. They will not give us emergency injunctions. They will not go up against the intelligence agencies. And what this will mean is that these implants, which are already implanted in a lot of us, will be turned on for torture chips, for torture of yourself, your children. Your children can be raped by remote control. They might not even be able to externalize it and tell you what's going on. It will just happen to them, and they will not know what's happening to them, because the entire sensation will be, they will think it's something internal to them, when in actual fact it's sex trafficking and remote controlled rape. So, the sex trafficking is bad enough, torture is bad enough, and then there's something called neurotechnology, which can take over humans, and that's the real ultimate frontier here that we need to shut down as quickly as possible. Because once every single person can be taken over, there's no turning back. We are entirely at the mercy of this crime cartel, because we will not have the cognitive abilities anymore, or will not have them in the moment, to be able to fight back. So this really is the last stand, and I worked very hard to get the court cases into shape and have everything arranged, and now I need your help. I really, really desperately need your help, and I will need it, ever more bitterly as time goes on over the coming weeks and months. So please join me. Thank you for joining me already. I can see that over 100 people are already live, and when Google Hangouts or YouTube says 100, it usually is a factor of 10 out, so it's probably 1,000 people already watching now. And please come back tomorrow, where we'll talk about my strategy of how I would like to shut down this criminality in a civilized manner, without leading to a loss of life among the victims and the innocent civilian population, and without it ending up in a civil war, which is precisely what the crime cartel would like us to engage in. So thank you very much for listening, and have a good night, and hopefully see you tomorrow. Bye for now.